So this is probably like my second time trying to attempt to go live. And at this point, I'm just gonna let things be as they are and not try to. Oh, let me make sure my mic is. Hello, testing. Hopefully that's good for everyone. Um, it's not an ASMR thing, but I do have the nails. This is just gonna be my wing it section of like attempting to communicate to the other world about my life as the title says, a model and a born psychic. A lot of people who have known me for years living in New York never really knew this about me until a couple of years ago. I just met with a photographer friend and we were catching up, and he happened to notice I started being more vocal or visual about it on my Instagram or on social media. But lo and behold, I've been born with this since I was 8 years old. Uh, it was a gifting that I didn't even know what to do with when I first realized about it. And I can go into detail about my awakening or my realization of as a child of being a medium and connecting with the sixth dimension or the other realm. Long story short, and again, I'll have another video to explain all of that. But long story short, I'm more, the 3D world is very secondary to me. And it's extremely hard to navigate because I'm so used to the astral world or the sixth dimensional region. And in simplistic terms, I always thought that other children saw what I was seeing or other kids communicated that way. I remember just a small memory, and then I'll go into other details of what it's like as a modern day mystic or model in my age, grown adult living, navigating 2024. But I'll just touch on this part. I remember being a young girl and trying to talk to kids at, in school, and they were basically not hearing my thoughts. I was trying to send them telepathic communication because I was like, okay, well, I can't drive. My verbal processing as a young girl, and I remember having this conscious thought: I'm a young girl and I'm exhausted that I have to wait until I'm older to communicate effectively the way that I want. So I'm going to telepathically communicate to them because, first of all, I can't drive. I don't have my license. My little legs can't take me anywhere. And also, I'm very frustrated because these people don't take me seriously. They just see the little girl body and they don't realize that I have a lot to say and I can see into the perceptive notion of what is really going on. For example, as a kid, the one child that was acting out in, pre-K and in first grade, I kept seeing visions of him being physically assaulted at home, and bruises were not shown at the time. I kept seeing his father as an alcoholic, and then knowing that he was not in a good place at home. And I felt sorry for him because at school he was wetting his pants, he was throwing tantrums, he was pulling girls' hair, he was a nuisance. He was pretty much a what you would call, and I hate this term, but bully in as a child. But I was like, oh, he's being physically assaulted every day, and he is his anger is being taken out on him relentlessly by his father. So why are they doing this to him? Don't they see what I see? Don't they understand? And that was like one of the prime examples of what I've experienced as a little girl. Just understanding empathy to the highest degree. And those who know me in person know about my childhood story, which I really just want to be careful about. I just want to document it properly, and this is not the live for it. This is not the video for it, but um those who know me in person know that I'm no stranger to extreme amounts of pain as a kid. Um I'm not saying that for you to feel sorry for me, but they always end up, and that goes into like the fast forward of the tone of the title of this live. That goes into the common misconception. A lot of people look at this and they look at what I do and they look at what I do online, or they see as me as a model and they go, "Oh, that girl, she's disconnected from what it even means to be in pain." Not all the time, actually. A lot of people who do end up talking to me realize I'm a lot more dimensional than that. Um, but that is also one of the prime paradoxes of what I do and what I know and what I've seen as opposed to what I look like. And I think in this lifetime, I think my guides and my angels and my purpose was to accept the 3D world. And had a lot of disassociation as a kid, even up until most recently, about what it means to be in a human body. It's extremely suffocating and it's extremely limiting how I feel in this human body. It was a lot. I was so it's just I when I was a kid, I just didn't understand what I was looking at in the mirror. I just didn't find it revelatory or reflective of what my soul felt. So that goes into saying too that I naturally, automatically can tune into a person's soul more than I can physically see them. It takes me about 3 days, and I've counted because it's been something that I've actually had to take note of just to kind of understand more about my human operation as a soul inhabiting this body and this, this being. It's literally taken me, and I've counted each time, probably 3 days for me to actually realize what someone looks like. So, being on set, doing modeling, it actually helps me to model because I'm not so self involved or connected to the physical being as like, this is all I have and I must hold on to it because I don't have any more worth outside of this face and this body. And I say that in a very joking way, but it's actually pretty damaging to the soul and sad and limiting. And the expiration date of beauty is absolutely stamped when someone thinks in those terms. The irony of it all is to go back to the original point 3 times in a row, or to go on this merry-go-round back to the original point, is that I think it's hilarious that, my guides thought it really funny. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. My guides thought it was really funny to put me into modeling, which I did not pursue, by the way, which I also was bullied as a kid. Side note, on a more simplistic human um, storyline, that I was also bullied as a kid, so I also didn't really understand, like, what beauty was when I came into that beauty. It's not a sob story, it's just something that happened. Um, from the human level, I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't," I was just like, I was more concerned with my inner world and my invisible world, because that was the only thing I saw first. And then I this was very latent, and it was physically latent. So, but I thought my guides thought it was extremely funny that they would have to put me into modeling. And it was something that pursued me. I didn't meet any of the standards when I was scouted and all that stuff. And it was almost relentless. Like, I would move into different locations. I would, avoid it. I would go into different degrees, and I would move into I would just avoid it, and it would always somehow come towards me. It's not a fake humble thing I'm saying. It's literally just that I was I think my angels guides, the purpose in this lifetime was for me to fully integrate and accept the 3D vessel and figure out how to take better care of myself. And, I've always, as a young girl, was so traumatized by realizing, outside of all the physical abuse I experienced as a child, which, again, side note, not for this video, but another time. Those who know me know what happened. But I thought I was traumatized by even being in a vessel that was so constricting, like I mentioned earlier, and escaping internally. The psychologists and the therapists would call it disassociation. That's not the case. That is the case. I'm sorry. Psychologically, that is the case. Scientifically, that is the case. But um, naturally, it wasn't from a place of just I'm avoiding reality and I'm avoiding trauma. It was literally, I just don't understand how it is to be human. Um, a lot of light workers, healers, empaths, and those who are more into the spiritual realm will probably say that I'm not been a human for very long, or that, oh, you're like from another extraterrestrial realm. We'll go into that later. It's something that the intro to this is not the first thing I want to be typecasted into. And this channel is like, oh, she's like a spiritual guru. I'm not Kat Torres. I'm not a cult leader. I'm not trying to be your next person to tell you what to do. Intuition for everyone is your internal blueprint and roadmap. And anyone who tries to rob that from you is absolutely off base. But I I'm not going to go into like the conspiracy theorist either. Um, I I'm just going to be my own realm of a channel or content. I am into metaphysics, esoteric studies. I do teach it. I do read it. I also read philosophy, psychology, neurobiology, science. It's a beautiful magic taken over by the philosophers and then the existentialists who ended up self-negating everything that magic could happen to. I do still like really love to delve into astrology. I love to delve into all the realms of the mind and other regions of this esoteric knowledge, but I am not going to typecast myself or push um a thought that may not resonate with you and still and make it seem like it has to be you because that's not what's going to happen here. But anyways, yeah, so I was never well adjusted to the 3D realm. When I was a little girl, I was seeing angelic beings, orbs, energy. Deceased children were coming into my room trying to get me to locate them for the police, which I ended up working with police officials. Remote viewing happened really young. For example, my little legs couldn't take me to my parents' office when I was young. They were working. I knew when there was a person who was abusing prescription pills, as my mom and dad were a doctor and a nurse, and I knew which file they were trying to forge to get prescription medication. I knew um, when they would go to the CVS or Walgreens to have a forged prescription pad of my father's that they had to go look out for him. Um, and there was a ring of people I knew who was trying to break into the office. I had a premonition as a kid, and as for an example, my mom and dad would have their own private practice, medical office. My dad was a gastroenterologist, my mother was a nurse, and I was a little girl that would visit with them after school and stay there in the back room and sleep and just do my homework and fall and until all hours of the night. Going home, locking up, I would sit in the waiting room because it was the only place in the office that had a TV. So while my mom was locking up and cleaning up and closing out the shop, I would be sitting there looking at the TV, and all of a sudden I would see the TV. I would get a vision of the TV. I was transported out of that moment, and I would see the TV that was on watching, like it was like Ricky Lake or something, like some talk show, and I would see the TV. I would be transported into a vision, and when I'm transported into a vision, um, I'm reliving it, and I'm no longer the senses of where I currently am is not no longer there, and I see the TV thrown through the glass window, which is there's a huge glass window in the waiting room, thrown through and broken onto the parking lot, and the vision stopped, and I would go, "Mom, I think your office is gonna be broken into or robbed tonight." Of course, I got, like, really lectured, or they didn't really understand what was wrong with their weird daughter, and they were just like, "Okay," like, but my mom is intuitive herself. This is where I get the giftings that were kind of repressed. She listened and she was like, "Okay," a little bit annoyed, of course, who wouldn't be to hear that from your child when you're just trying to go home and rest, and after a long 10 to 12-hour work shift on your feet, you just wanna sleep, and to hear more chaotic experiences in front of you, it's like, "Okay, thank you, but let's just go home." Only to be woken from my bed around in the middle of the night. "Samaya." Get out of bed. You- The police are on the phone. The office has been broken into. My mother just looking at me like, okay, I have a special child on her hands. So that was sort of first indicators. I'm just checking my phone, like, who is calling me right now? Um, that was one of the first indicators of, as a kid, like maybe I'm alone here. And it was overwhelming to, first of all, be a young girl in a young body when I really just wanted to communicate effectively. I felt trapped. The human meat suit was extremely heavy. And then also having all of this knowledge and seeing invisible beings and nobody to communicate my thoughts to. I wanted to be friends with human beings, human children, and they would bully me relentlessly. I was more nonverbal than I was verbal growing up. My literacy rate was like through the roof, but my verbal processing was delayed. I was mute for a while due to some traumatic experiences in my life, but in my family that I had to endure for almost 20 years. Um, and I was seeing dead people. And so to kind of even survive, I could either do I, it's a miracle that I didn't go into drugs at all. Like, I had the resources. I was literally falling asleep in barrels of like prescription pills near me from my mom's office, not even knowing what they were. I just knew that they smelled bad. You know, it's a miracle I didn't go into that, but I ended up just self. I was so angry that I was alone with my sensitivity that I had basically got mad at God, and it was like, I don't want this, and made it die in my soul so that I could at least have a normal life as a girl. Um, Going to high school, elementary school, college, just navigating without any of this open. I hate doing that because I don't want you to think I'm like a shaman or a guru. That's not what we're doing here. I'm just, yeah. Um, without any of it open, and numbed myself for a long time so that I could at least survive, and have a good night's rest and not know too much. Um, and obviously, I think some people who know me know this story. It all came back with a vengeance extremely intensely when COVID hit in New York, and I was living there. I was modeling for like 10 years of my life. Lived in New York 12 years, but modeled 10 of them. Modeled in different places as well. Um, and I remember being so I felt like physically like something was it was to the point of no return. There were protests going on for George Floyd. They were setting off uh they were blowing up cop cars, NYPD cop cars on the side of the street where I live. There were protests, there were people like breaking quarantine. There was like a lot of protests about stop Asian hate, which I really don't need to be. I didn't really want to be the center of attention. I didn't really need anyone to apologize to me because COVID started. So they were like, discriminating Asian people at that time because of COVID spread. And it wasn't even that really upset me. It was like the internal awareness that something is coming up to the surface that I've repressed for 20 plus years. And I remember just feeling what came on as a extreme panic attack that came into seizure-like experiences, crawling on the floor. The anxiety was mounting, verbally could not communicate, just crawling. My partner was like, "Oh my god, what is going on with you?" And he thought it was like the high stress levels definitely detonated it for sure of my surroundings, but it's like my body had no more skin, and it was all just nerve endings taking in on everything. And my sensitivity that I've numbed and forgotten about, didn't even think I was psychic. I convinced myself for that long, came rushing into me like a fury, like a fury. I was just encapsulated with the s all of my clairs, clairsentience, clairvoyance, remote viewing, claircognizance, clairaudience, mediumship, bam, all of it on my body at once, and I literally looked like I had a psychotic break. And if you do research, people who have run from their giftings, those who are naturally gifted, who've tried to live in the normal world and the normal life or be in the matrix, as they say, they end up looking like they either have to go into the psych ward if they don't accept their giftings, or they accept it and they do something about it. And that was the only choices I had. I have other friends who are intuitives, who are other female psychics, who've had the same red pill, blue pill predicament, if you want to call it that. I know red pill and blue pill have like terrible connotations on YouTube. Not trying to go down that route. That's not what I meant by that. The two choices. Um, and I remember seeing my father, who, by the way, you didn't hear this in the beginning. I've grew up with a disabled father, and I only knew him as that. He got a stroke when I was 1 year old. My two brothers known him to be very different, and obviously my mother had a very handsome, beautiful husband, and all of a sudden he was almost paraplegic with only 10% chance of living, which was also a miracle because he wasn't supposed to live, and he ended up living for 20 plus years. And my mother saw visitations of light beings and angelic beings promise her that he would live, even though the doctors, her being a medical professional, him being a doctor himself, science based, love you science, will never, ever discredit you. And I will continue to use and connect with science in any of my spiritual topics. But ended up seeing her visual clairvoyance during the time my father was sick, had a stroke. He ended up living for that a little bit longer, until I knew that he was going to pass, before God, like my guides showed me beforehand. Um, but I only knew my father as disabled. And by the time COVID and George Floyd and all of this was going down, he already passed. And he was at the foot of my bed as my partner just placed me in bed, did not know what to do with me, was like, I need to call the hospital. I need to call her brothers because I remember him being on the phone, like almost arguing, there is something wrong with your sister. And she's been asking for help. She's been asking you to help her since she was a little girl. And you guys never, I heard him on the phone. And all I kept seeing was my father at the foot of my bed, laughing, 28 years old, standing, and just jovial and beautiful and handsome. And he was like, Samaya, it's like he's laughing and he's just playing a saxophone out of all of them. I'm like, why does he have this saxophone? He's like, I love music. I love to torment your mother because I used to play and sing and dance just to make her, just to tease her. Never saw my father like this when he showed up, clairvoyantly when he showed up. I don't know my dad any other way, but then to be a little bit like very repressed verbally, wasn't very able to communicate as much, and would just let me hug him. And when I would feed him and take care of him and clothe him and help him into the shower and help him to bed, like I just never seen him talk the way he did. And he was so handsome. And he was just kept joking. I'm like, Dad, why are you? First of all, I was shocked out of my mind as a young girl to see him, who has passed over, standing. I've never seen that. And then also to be joking at the worst time of my life when I feel like I'm going to be going to Bellevue Hospital. Um, I was like, why are you laughing? Like first, and he's like, it's me. He's like, you're going to be fine. He's like, you have to accept this gifting. You have to accept this gifting or you are going to go to the hospital. You have to accept who you really are. It's time, Samaya. You've held back for too long. You need to help a lot of individuals. And that was the first acceptance. Like actual acceptance that I cannot no longer reject myself anymore. I lived with this secret since I was 8 years old. I was masking, high masking, what's it called in the LGBTQ world? I was straight acting. I was bearding myself, like whatever you want to call it, for that long. Um, and he said, if you accept it, you're gonna go. The symptoms will go down. You'll be okay. If you don't accept it, it's gonna get worse. And I did see it. Like a lot people, there's true indicators of people who've had psychotic breaks, schizophrenic, all that stuff in older tribes. Obviously, like it's different for every story. It's not a blanket statement. I do believe people have chemical imbalances and mental disorders and mental neurobiological issues that require medication, and a story, it's basis by basis, I've heard of people who have taken ayahuasca and have never been able to come back from the psychotic break because their brain chemistry, chemically, neurobiologically cannot handle it. All of that stuff, that is still valid. But in my case, and in certain cases of empaths and people who are spiritually connected to the other realm, they cannot last long pretending that that they don't have that in this 3D dimension. It takes it's only a matter of time before they confront themselves because their vessel and their mind and their body is not built to pretend they don't know what they know. And that was sort of an indicator of my first real clear experience that I stepped into this realm of like, yes, you are this, and there I have no other choice. So that was before COVID. That was like at the beginning of COVID. Fast forward till now, and I fully have gone into my reading abilities. I have secretly taken clients before that happened. I would turn it off and on. I would have a psychic gifting in my private realm. I've had clients that I were private that I never advertised that I was a working psychic for before COVID, but I've also like had a love-hate relationship, denial about it. And so I've had clients, but no one really knew, and even I was like, am I like a con artist? Am I like an emotional catfish? Is this like I kept questioning myself even then, even when I did have clients, or I would take it out of my brain and go, oh, that was a one-time fluke. That was a one-time thing. I've literally convinced myself that I'm not really that big of a no. It's just me. Maybe I'm like I should stop because I could be, like I was thinking about all these logical things to say that I'm not really this. Um, so that was like that was the indicator that I had to accept it 100,000% and live it full time. So yes, this channel, and in this, stream, I just wanted to explain to you like I live a very paradoxical life in this existence as a woman. Like people know me as a model, but that's 10% of my life. The rest of the percentage, 90% of that is living a full-blown spiritual existence. And I will go into this deeper as I've opened up. I have like a mystery school that I've just announced recently. Again, not a cult, not Kat Torres, not trying to take the Kool-Aid Jonestown Massacre. No, I'm literally just saying I have a school for other psychic women who need their giftings, who need support, because your daily existence is not your day. Like it's not, you're so energetically sensitive that everything is surrounded by my intuition. For example, before I have, let's say I have 3 clients lined up for the day. It's normal for me to not consume any solid foods until after my client session. It's normal for me to not be able to do certain exercises or go into certain, and it's not because I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sensitive that I'm gonna faint at every moment because I'm so fragile and I'm like a little butterfly." No, I'm so energetically sensitive that I know what is for me and what is not for me. My entire existence is living on this thermometer or this incubation or this fire that never goes out. It's kind of like if I were to use the symbolism of a fire that I have to keep tending. If you have a campfire moment, it's like you have to do everything, collect dry brush, make sure that the wind is not too much, cover it this way. It's always tending this fire within me. And my physical surroundings look like that. I still like to have fun. You know, I love to go to the bars. I love to have little drinks here and there. I love to go dancing. I love to dress up. But because I know what I know and I see what I see, it's almost as if like before, and this is how most people are, they just kind of like bang their head through life, living by default or living by trial and error, and only getting to 20% of what their real purpose is. And then for me, it's like the entire blockage blueprint, like my entire skull is pulled back and I'm like, "Oh, I see everything. I see how this person can benefit from that. I see how that person is in pain. I see how I can't help them right now until this date of the time they want a reading from me, but they really are not ready. I see how that person really like is lustfully like trying to get with me, but they don't realize that if I talk to them, it's going to blow their mind or it's going to make them afraid. It's all these different layers, and I no longer. I have this analogy. It's like you're in an escape room with the world, and you're basically all blindfold in the dark, and then one day someone told you even had a blindfold on to begin with, and then you find the tie in the back of your blindfold and you take it off, and you're seeing how everybody's just like bumping into each other, and you're trying to help them to get to the door so they can open the door and get out. And that's kind of like how it is sometimes as a psychic. uh, there's another, the other side of it is like, oh my god, what does she know? um The thing about people that villainize psychics and they think, "Oh my god, they're spies," like, "She just knows everything, like, I don't wanna," what if, people that do that, it's because they either wish they had the gifting and wanted it so they think it's power, and it to a degree it is because the government Project Stargate thought it was great to, like, spy on their enemies. I understand historically what they think psychics have been used for government-wise. Psychics have been used and exploited by the government and by other, um, larger entities. Not exploited, maybe they've studied, but they have used psychics for government tactics, to get more like information. There's studies at John Hopkins using brain scans about mediums and like how their brain works. It's usually offline, so it's authentic. They've studied the brain patterns of psychics, all of that. Um, but I said all of that to say people who have ever villainized me is because they secretly wish that they could have it so they could take power over people. And the most authentic, and I want you to really write this down and to keep this in the marker board in the back of your mind that is written with permanent marker, not dry erase. Most true authentic psychics don't want to be known, don't want any power over anybody, and for a matter of fact, truthfully don't care to know what you know and are not that nosy. And that's me. That's who I am. And I was actually like extremely overwhelmed and sad that I knew what I knew. And I felt the burden of that existence. Um, so for those who know me and who like, oh, I hang out with Samaya, like she's cool, like, but she knows my mind. I'll tell you this. It's a big responsibility, but the thing is, I didn't want this responsibility. And that is why the source, divine, God, whatever you call it, trust me with it. Because the last thing I want is to take advantage of people because I have no allegiance over people. It's not my job. Um, on a side note, though, from a human level, I've seen more than you internally, externally, and physically, viscerally, on a human, spiritual, multidimensional level than you would ever realize. I've seen the worst of the worst and the darkest of the darkest you could even think of. Everything that you just thought possible, I've seen, um, psychically, and I've endured those stories only to be verified later. So nothing scares me. But it's not about me. It's really about you. And the reason I get to see these things is I could help people to get to the real truth of the raw soul of who they really are. And I genuinely just, I'm a Scorpio too, if that makes any sense. I don't really care to know your business, but I also at the same time keep things sacred. So your secrets are safe with me. Um, and I also make a really good friend because I've seen everything. But that's not advertisement for you to feel sorry for me or that I need friends or that I'm goading you. It's not a campaign to make you like me. It's literally the truth. Like, I see the human heartbeat. I see the soul's heartbeat at all times with people. And a lot of people have the ability to open up and be intuitive. We all have that honing system, that tool within us. We all have that equipment built in. Some are more sensitive than others. Some, depending on their path and their role in life, you don't have to be a psychic like me, but you have to understand the real true psychics too. Number two, what makes a real true psychic is that they awaken the psychic or the intuition inside of you. And that's what makes me not a guru because I don't need it. I don't like people following me. I like my privacy. you know, there's nobody to impress. There's no crowd that I need that I can't fulfill within myself. But that's number two. It's literally, you have a good psychic reading when it awakens your intuition yourself and you start to have reverence for the way that your intuition has been screaming at you to listen to it for all this time. So like, wow, I went into like all the different topics that I also channel. So like maybe that was needing to be said for the sake of you to understand it. This is not even scratching the surface of things that I could relate to you later about all the stories. I didn't even touch on how it is to be a model. Um, the dichotomy is not lost on spirit though, or on me, because it definitely means a lot for the reasons for why it's happening. I think it is quite the paradox, but paradoxes are necessary in existence in the earth and society, and currently in 2024 for things to break, for for patterns that are no longer serving us to break. So God creates paradoxes for that very reason. So I'm a little bit wow and overwhelmed by even what I just said. So I think that I can stop the stream here. I love that there's nobody in the room right now because I'm able to kind of like process things easier in my own. Again, and I love privacy. I will keep this on my channel because I have no followers at the moment, but I don't care because I want it to be something that one day you stumble upon this and you get something, and I'll keep posting more. I'm going to have more story times. I think that'll be the first installation of getting people to know like what I'm about and more of the metaphysical and esoteric realm. But yeah, if you happen to stumble upon this video, I hope it feeds your soul and I hope it feeds your soul well. Take care.